My guest at this time is a WWE Hall of Famer and the host of the new ad-free shows podcast, My World with Jeff Jarrett. It's JEFFJARRETT. Ain't he great? Grab your slap nuts. It's Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, welcome.
There,
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Nick, you got it all out. Spelled the name, slap nuts. You get Don't Piss Me Off in there, but you did get My World. That's the name of the podcast. Drops next Tuesday. But no, I appreciate you having me on and looking forward to chatting, man. Good to hear
you have so many great lines, Jeff, like so quotable, you know?
Oh, I don't know about that, but no, it's well, when you've been around, earlier this month, I just celebrated my 35th year in the business. So to hang around that long, I better have a couple of lines here and there.
Well, obviously, like you said, 35 years in the business, Jeff. I mean, you have had such a career, everything from performing to promoting, but now you're podcasting. How did Conrad convince you to get into this endeavor with him?
You know, it's persistence. It would be at the very top of it, but you know, I've been asked that. I've had folks like, why now? My kids ask me that. You know, my wife, people like why now? And really, when I'll have to give a little bit of the credit to the pandemic, but also celebrating 35 years. Look, I grew up in this business, and my mindset has always been, I don't look in the rearview mirror. Yes, you've got to learn from the past and learn from your mistakes, and how can I get better? But look, I've told wrestling stories in the dressing room or in the car and airports and flights, and that's just sort of what we did. But to actually do it in a podcast platform, I never had any interest in that. But as time has gone on, and like I said, celebrating 35 years, but the world we live in, and me taking just, you know, as Conrad, he's a salesman, persistent at that. But you know, we live in an on-demand society. Netflix, Hulu. It's we want to watch things, and we're entertained by on-demand entertainment. And so podcast now fits in that genre. Yeah, terrestrial radio is always going to be around, and you know, the world of streaming, like I said, it's just sort of come into play. And when we're talking from a business perspective, blue chip sponsors like Geico, and I'm not, this isn't about talking about sponsors, but blue chip sponsors coming on board and being a part of the show, the platform. You know, my media tour that I'm doing for My World reaches from London. I've got Australia tonight. You know, I'm talking to multiple media outlets. The podcasting genre, so to speak, is huge. And so the business model, I do, like you said, I've got a few stories to tell. But for me, last year during the pandemic, when and I'm not talking about Joe Dirt, I'm talking about The Last Dance. But watching that documentary, I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, and I'm a basketball junkie.
Sure.
But seeing the story behind the story really fascinated me. Like, oh wow, and so that very much interested me. I looked at Phil Jackson and Steve Kerr, and you know, you know all these boys if you're from Chicago, but just the ins and outs, and how everything worked. Well, you know, for a wrestling fan, and I've grown up in this. My grandmother got in the business in 1946. My father wrestled and promoted. So, you know, I've got 70 plus years of stories to tell, a lot of them firsthand for myself. Just the time's right. And again, it fascinates me to hear stories behind the stories. And I told Conrad, there's actually sometimes stories behind the stories behind the stories. And that really gets into people saying, wow, I didn't really look at it that way before. And I hope to do that.
Because you have such a really interesting perspective, Jeff, because you're a generational talent, right? Like you were born right into pro wrestling, into a pro wrestling family. So there were, you know, I understand the layers on top of layers, because it's not like you're getting into this and finding out about this at a later age. This has always been second nature to you. I know you're going to talk a lot about your career. I thought I'd maybe kind of ask you, you know, what was it like before, you know, you were an active pro wrestler? What was it like for you being young and just kind of growing up in a pro wrestling family in general?
A couple of different examples that I've always liked to share are, if you remember the Moondogs, there was a legendary video that got seen over and over of them coming up out of this swamp, and it looked all descriptive. That in reality was a pond on the back of our farm that was, you didn't go around there because there was a bunch of bugs, but there are two wrestlers that you get a camera, and my dad is the producer, and that video was shot. Watching the Andy Kaufman, Jerry Lawler episode from my couch and knowing the story behind the story, Seeing, we used to call not even smart to the business, but I wasn't smart to the business. That sort of happened over time. That when you see different guys come by the house to heels and baby faces in the same car, and whether it's picking up programs or a suitcase or paychecks or whatever it is, but when you see guys not coming through the curtain and getting a ring, but you see them in their street clothes and leaving the gym, you see the business behind the business. That always fascinated me. And then, as a 14-year-old boy, me riding to different towns with my grandmother, meeting Jim Cornette's mother, that Jim was just getting into the business. So seeing it from that perspective and going into small towns in Kentucky and Tennessee and northern Mississippi and Arkansas and hanging up window cards, which I did. When you go in and you're talking to a store owner and they say, hey, what are you doing here? Hey, can I hang this poster up in your store to promote the event? Oh, who's coming? Having those kind of conversations, little did I know, I was literally learning the business on the fly. And it was the early stages of understanding the promotion business, that the more window cards we hang up and the more chatter we have and the more talk, the more people show up, and the more people that show up, the more concession stands you can sell. And if you have a great show and the main event's great, they're going to come back next week. Just those layers of the business is I got lucky. I'm blessed. I got, a lot of people don't get to be around that side of it, and understanding that it takes everybody rowing in the same direction, period. And so those kind of stories that Conrad has pulled out of me over the last couple of years that I met, he's like, dude, you got to do a podcast. You got to tell these stories. And so here we are. My World launches May 4th.
How was it for you? You brought up my favorite topic, Andy, right? Kaufman. The whole world is sitting there, and these two have them in the palm of their hand, right? In this moment. What was it like for you watching that and knowing that you kind of knew what the magic trick was going on there?
Jerry Lawler, I grew up, he was my idol. The king. I love Jackie Fargo, but the king was week in, week out.
Yeah.
The art of the promo, the art of the work, the art of our industry. So many things get lost in translation with, I'll call it the fast pace, action that goes on that is a performance.